officers, Rickman and Mills, overstepping their authority, had become second nature. They moved through their shifts unchecked, intimidating and targeting without fear of consequence. So when they spotted Brianna Freeman, a well-dressed black woman leaving a luxury boutique alone, they made a snap judgment. Without asking questions, they accused her of stealing and forced her to the ground, convinced she'd be too afraid or too powerless to push back. She looked like an easy win. What they didn't know was who she was married to. Just a few blocks away, Commander Freeman, a Delta Force veteran with tactical training and a mind built for strategy, had already spotted the unfolding situation. And when he saw his wife being manhandled, the illusion of control, the officers thought they had disappeared. They weren't just dealing with another civilian. This time, they had crossed a line they couldn't walk back. And now, the Freemans weren't backing down, not with anger, but with facts, discipline, and an unshakable sense of justice. The afternoon sun spilled across the sidewalks of Buckhead, one of Atlanta's most upscale neighborhoods. Luxury cars lined the streets. The air carried notes of fresh magnolia and high-end cologne. The world here moved quietly and selectively. Stores didn't just open for anyone. Brianna Freeman stepped out of LX, one of the city's most exclusive boutiques. Her dress was new, her heels sharp, her presence unmistakably confident. She checked her phone, circling the block. Be there in 5. A small smile tugged at her lips. This day, for once, was hers. A high-powered attorney in one of the toughest firms in the city, Brianna was used to defending others. Standing her ground wasn't a role she played. It was who she was. But that didn't mean she was always seen clearly. In boardrooms and boutiques alike, she had learned that success didn't always shield you, especially when your skin reminded people of their assumptions. She waited under an awning, scanning the street for her husband's matte black SUV, a sleek machine built for function, softened only by the touches she insisted on: leather seats, a heated wheel, a little comfort in a world that often gave them none. Their relationship wasn't flashy. It was built on mutual respect, grit, and the kind of trust you earn when you've both weathered real storms. Jalen had served in places he rarely spoke of. She had fought her own battles in a city where being the only black woman in the room meant being doubted twice as often and heard half as much. But they had made it through, together. As she waited, she noticed it again, that quiet shift in energy, the kind of subtle tension that many women learn to feel before they ever learn to drive, a glance that lingers too long, a stranger's eyes that scan rather than greet, the security guard who hovered just a beat too close. Brianna had felt it before, and now it crept back, unwelcome, but familiar. Then the patrol car appeared. 2 officers stepped out, casual in posture but not in focus. One looked directly at her. She straightened instinctively, as if preparing for a meeting she hadn't agreed to attend. No sign of Jalen yet, just her, and 2 men who had made up their minds long before asking a single question. But today wasn't going to unfold like the others. Today, they didn't realize who was watching or who they were trying to intimidate. They were about to find out. Her fingers hesitated just above the phone. It wasn't fear, not yet, but instinct. That quiet signal some people spend a lifetime ignoring, but Brianna had learned to listen early. She reminded herself, it was just another peaceful day, just another calm afternoon. She hadn't done anything wrong. She was simply waiting for her husband. That thought should have brought comfort. Instead, something shifted, and that comfort slipped away. Stepping slightly farther from the boutique, Brianna adjusted her purse strap and glanced down the block. The light had changed, warm, golden, as a delivery truck rumbled through a side street. The shopping bag swayed gently in her hand, the fabric of her dress brushing against her legs. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to feel proud of this small, quiet reward. Something earned, something hers. Her hand hovered again near her phone. Should she call Jalen or wait? He was always on time, always steady. She trusted him, but the silence around her had changed. Not loud, not obvious, just still, unnaturally so. Across the street, two officers stood beside their cruiser, one older, built like a wall, the other younger, lanky, scrolling through a phone. Neither looked rushed, but something in their posture, or maybe the way the older one's gaze held a little too long, made her shoulders lift slightly, unconsciously. She turned back toward the road, walking with calm, measured steps. But then came the sound. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, impossible to miss. The kind of walk that announces itself. "Afternoon, ma'am," a voice said behind her, polite on the surface, but practiced. The kind of tone that's meant to sound harmless while holding power underneath. She turned. The older officer, Rickman, according to the name on his vest, stood just a few steps away, one hand on his belt, the other gesturing casually, like this was just small talk. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" he asked, a smile barely touching his eyes. "It is," Brianna answered, her tone calm but careful. He stepped in a bit closer. "You shop around here often?" he asked, nodding toward the small bag at her side. The way he said it, casual on the surface, but already pulling at something deeper, suspicion masked as charm. "From time to time," she answered, shifting her stance, not aggressive, just steady. "That bag from 60?" he continued, head tilting as if studying her more than the boutique. "Not too many folks walk out of there with something in hand, especially dressed like that." His tone was light, but the implication wasn't. "Yes," she said evenly, "I made a purchase." Rickman chuckled. "Well, looks like you made the whole store look better just walking out. That dress fits you perfectly." Her pulse tightened. "I'm meeting someone," she said firmly, "so I'll be on my way." Rickman smiled again, gesturing toward the sidewalk. "We can walk with you. Make sure you're safe. Not everyone's as polite as we are." His partner Mills had now joined him, saying nothing, standing just close enough to make his presence feel heavy. His hands twitched at his sides. He wouldn't meet her eyes. "You don't need to rush," Rickman added, grin widening. "Man like that must be lucky to have you." "I said," she repeated slowly, "I'm meeting my husband. I'm not here to chat." Rickman raised his eyebrows, pretending to be surprised. "Whoa now. Didn't mean to upset you. No need to be defensive." "You followed me," she said coldly. "You commented on my body, and now you're standing too close. That's not conversation. That's something else." Rickman folded his arms. "Maybe I just admire your confidence. You've got that don't mess with me energy, like you run this block. Made me think you had some serious connections." "I do," Brianna said, voice steady as stone. "I know who I am. That's all I need." Rickman gave a short, bitter laugh. "I see. One of those—" She turned to walk past him. "This conversation is over." But he stepped into her path, smile gone. "Where are you heading in such a hurry?" "I told you. I'm meeting someone. Unless there's an official reason to stop me." And that's where things started to change, because the moment she said those words, the tone shifted. What had begun as subtle discomfort was about to escalate, and what they didn't know yet was that the man she was meeting was watching from just down the block. "I'll be going," Brianna said firmly. Rickman's voice dropped. "Why so quick to leave, ma'am? We're just asking a few questions. You act like you've got somewhere urgent to be." Brianna pressed her lips into a line. "Because I have every right to walk away." He leaned in slightly, his tone sharpening. "People shoplift from that boutique all the time. Doesn't matter how they're dressed. Sometimes the ones who look like they belong are the ones you need to watch the closest." Mills shifted uncomfortably behind him. But Rickman raised a hand, silencing his partner. "It's our job to follow up on anything that seems off. That's all we're doing." "There was nothing off until you made it that way," Brianna said, her voice calm but clipped. "Then clear it up," Rickman replied smoothly, nodding toward her bag. "Let's see the receipt, that's all." She took a step back. "Number. You don't have the right to go through my things, and you know it." Rickman's demeanor changed. Then I'll have to consider your refusal part of a bigger concern. Brianna narrowed her gaze. Which is? Possible shoplifting, he said, tapping his radio. You fit a description. Black female, green dress, exiting LX with an item in hand. She stared at him. That report doesn't exist. You just made it up. Rickman tilted his head slightly. Funny you'd know that. Unless you had something to hide? Brianna opened her mouth, but the air around them seemed to shift again. Sharper, tighter. Rickman lowered his voice. Let's not make this public, okay? He said, pretending to offer her a way out. No need to attract attention. She stood firm, spine straight, shoulders squared. The sun still lit the street like nothing had changed, but everything had. The moment he lied into his radio, the moment he invented a situation to justify his actions, the line had been crossed. There's nothing to sort out, Brianna said flatly. You're fabricating this entire scenario. Rickman let out a dry laugh. Nobody's fabricating anything, but refusing a lawful request doesn't exactly help your case. You made an unlawful request, she countered, and I exercised my right to decline. Mills stepped slightly forward again, glancing between them, unsure. Maybe we should... Rickman cut him off with a look. She's escalating. Brianna raised her hands slightly, not surrender, but control. I'm not looking for conflict. I haven't done anything wrong. If you have legitimate concerns, I'm happy to answer questions, with proper cause and with legal representation present. Your attorney? Rickman asked, his voice edged with mockery. I am an attorney, she said, her voice steady despite the tightness in her chest. And I know exactly where this is headed. He stepped in close, their faces nearly level. Where it's headed, he said through gritted teeth, is wherever I decide. You think your badge makes you the law? She asked quietly. No, he muttered. I think people like you always think they're above it. Dressed to impress, waiting for someone to say no so you can scream about discrimination and lawsuits. That's the game, right? Brianna blinked, stunned. Did you really just say that? You heard me. Her voice hardened. Officer, step back. Rickman's hand snapped forward, grabbing her wrist. The grip was sudden, forceful. You're being investigated, he said harshly. Stop resisting. I'm not resisting, she said, twisting instinctively. Let go of me. Mills didn't move. His hand hovered near his belt, but his eyes were wide with hesitation. Rickman's grip tightened. With one motion, he twisted her arm behind her and swept her legs from under her. The sidewalk hit hard. Her shoulder slammed the ground first, the impact knocking the breath from her lungs. Her cheek scraped against the pavement. The shopping bag toppled, its contents spilling beside her. You're hurting me, she gasped. You should have complied, Rickman snapped. He pressed his knee into her back, pinning her in place. Please, she said, you don't have to do this. I gave you a chance, he muttered, close enough now that his breath hit her neck. But you people never know when to stop talking. Mills took a hesitant step forward. Rick, maybe we... Get the cuffs, Rickman barked. Mills reached for them, his fingers trembling. I didn't steal anything, Brianna said, her voice raw. This is an assault. My receipt is in my purse. Sure it is, Rickman said, tone cold. And I'm the mayor. You're lying, she said through clenched teeth. You know I didn't do anything. You acted suspicious. You refused a lawful order. You matched a report. That's all the paperwork needs. There was no report, she said, eyes burning. You invented it. There is now, Rickman said, snapping the cuffs around her wrists with a hard click. The metal bit into her skin. Across the street, someone shouted. A woman near the valet post had pulled out her phone. A man in a business suit had stopped mid-step, watching from the curb. People were beginning to notice, but by then, the damage had been done. Phone still in hand, his face unreadable, the man stood silent. And yet, no one stepped in. Let me go! Brianna's voice rose, stronger this time. Please, someone, help! Rickman only tightened his grip on her shoulder. You're done talking. Then, with brutal precision, he drove his elbow into her ribs, The breath left her lungs in an instant. Her body curled in pain before he forced her flat again. Mills flinched. "That's enough," he muttered. Rickman shot him a glare but didn't speak. Brianna lay motionless, gasping, her vision blurred at the edges. The moment stretched, unbearable and raw. The pavement burned through the fabric of her dress, and she tasted blood rising faintly at the back of her throat. Still no sign of Jalen, her husband, her strength. He was out there. She knew he'd be looking for her by now, but deep down, she also knew what it would mean if he found her like this, what it might cost him to step into this scene. Rickman rose, adjusted his vest, and yanked her roughly to her feet. Her knees gave slightly. The impact from earlier still echoed through her bones. "Let's go. You're under arrest." "For what?" she choked out. "Obstruction, refusal, theft," he said coldly. "We'll figure it out at the station. This is a mistake." "No," he said flatly, dragging her toward the cruiser. "This is a message." Just as she stumbled toward the open door, a voice cut through the noise, louder than the crowd, louder than the distant sirens. "What do you think you're doing to my wife?" Rickman turned, and in that instant, Jalen Freeman was already running. He moved before his mind could catch up. The image alone had hit him like a shot to the chest. Brianna, his wife, bent beneath two officers, her arms restrained, her face twisted in pain, her green dress stained with dirt and concrete. One officer held her arm, the other her waist, and then Jalen saw it. Rickman's elbow slam into her ribs. Everything inside him turned to fire. He didn't scream. He didn't hesitate. He sprinted. The crowd had grown. People stood frozen, phones raised like shields. Some whispered, others watched, silent, but no one moved. Jalen's boots struck the pavement with purpose. Time slowed. His mind sharpened like a blade, scanning options, preparing for what was next. "Get your hands off my wife!" he shouted, his voice cutting the air like thunder. Rickman turned, clearly annoyed, until he saw the force barreling toward him. Jalen wasn't just angry, he was controlled, trained, focused. "Step back!" Rickman barked, lifting a hand as if to stop him. "This is a police matter." "She's not resisting," Jalen growled, closing the gap in seconds. "And I saw you hit her." Mills reached for his belt, hand grazing his baton, but his hesitation betrayed him. Rickman stepped forward, trying to chest-check Jalen back. "You need to back." Jalen struck. One clean, precise move. The heel of his palm snapped up under Rickman's chin, a sharp, disorienting blow. Rickman stumbled, arms flailing, thrown off balance. Mills lunged in from the side, but Jalen pivoted fast, sweeping low and driving his shoulder into Mills's ribs. The impact slammed him into the cruiser with controlled force. Mills let out a startled grunt as air left his lungs. Jalen didn't stop. He pinned Mills with his forearm, firm enough to send a message, but not to injure. "Let her go!" Jalen demanded, eyes locked on Rickman, who was now regaining his footing, and furious. Rickman wiped the corner of his mouth, then reached for his taser. "You just assaulted an officer," he barked. "You're done." Jalen's voice dropped, calm and deadly. "Number you are." Still cuffed, Brianna tried to lift her head, her voice cracking. "Jalen, don't..." But it was already too late. Rickman lunged, taser raised. Jalen twisted, letting the charge skim past his shoulder. His hand shot forward, seizing Rickman's wrist mid-strike, twisting it downward until the device dropped with a clatter. With his other hand, Jalen drove the edge of his palm into Rickman's shoulder, forcing him lower, then followed with a clean, fast elbow to the side of the head. Rickman dropped to a knee, teeth clenched in pain. Jalen stood over him, breathing hard but steady, and this time, people were watching, phones were recording, and the silence was finally breaking. Jalen's stance was low, firm, every step deliberate. His body moved with the kind of precision forged not in street fights, but in real conflict. Environments where chaos ruled, where friends and enemies looked alike, and where hesitation could cost a life. These weren't protectors in front of him. They were threats, Someone in the crowd gasped as Rickman hit the ground. A man nearby muttered, "He's military," as if trying to explain the controlled fury unfolding in front of them. Mills scrambled up, baton drawn now, and rushed forward in a wide arc, hoping to catch Jalen off guard. But Jalen ducked low and struck the inside of Mills's knee with a sharp palm. The younger officer crumpled with a cry, grabbing his leg in pain. Rickman came again, angry, reckless, but Jalen met him head-on. They slammed against the cruiser, fists flying. Rickman was stronger than he looked, but his movements were fueled by rage, not discipline. Jalen dodged a wild swing and drove 2 clean blows into Rickman's ribs, finishing with a powerful knee to the midsection. Rickman staggered, coughing, barely staying on his feet. Jalen seized the back of Rickman's vest and slammed him into the hood of the car. The crowd jolted as metal rang out beneath Rickman's weight. Across the sidewalk, Brianna pushed herself upright again, cuffs biting into her wrists. Her eyes locked on Jalen, fists clenched, eyes locked, his presence like a wall between her and danger. He wasn't reacting anymore. He was defending, and nothing would break that line. Mills came at him again, silent, desperate. Jalen turned at the last second, ducked, and threw the officer clean over his shoulder. Mills landed hard, the impact echoing off the concrete. Jalen stood over Brianna now. "Touch her again," he warned, voice like steel, "and you won't walk straight again." Rickman staggered up, coughing, one hand fumbling for his radio. Jalen took a step toward him. "I'm not done." Rickman's voice crackled through the radio, breathless. "Unit 342, officer needs assistance. Suspect is hostile, military trained, requesting immediate backup." Across the street, a valet froze mid-step. The onlookers stepped back, phones raised, voices rising. Someone tripped against a parked car. A car alarm screamed. Buckhead had turned into a battlefield. Jalen didn't flinch. He stood tall, breathing heavy, blood trickling from his lip, a cut splitting across his brow from Mills's earlier strike. But his eyes didn't blink. His body was still locked in that same balanced, immovable stance, built from discipline, forged under fire. Rickman didn't wait for backup. Blinded by pride and pain, he rushed again, trying to tackle Jalen to the ground. Jalen braced low, turned, and let Rickman's own momentum drag them both into the street. They crashed onto the asphalt, shoulders slamming hard. Rickman threw a punch that caught Jalen's jaw, snapping his head to the side. The taste of blood filled his mouth. Rickman used the moment to grab a handful of Jalen's shirt and yank him halfway up. "Think you're tough? You're just another—" The sentence never finished. Jalen's head snapped forward, colliding with Rickman's face. A brutal crunch followed. Blood sprayed. Rickman screamed, falling back, clutching his nose. Jalen rose to his feet, slow and focused, wiping his lip. His face was calm, terrifyingly calm. And behind that calm was a fire that wasn't going out until Brianna was safe. From behind, Mills attacked again, this time not holding back. The baton cracked against Jalen's ribs. He gasped, body curling slightly, but he didn't fall. Instead, he pivoted, caught Mills's arm, locked the elbow, and twisted. Mills screamed. The baton clattered to the pavement. Jalen swept his legs out and drove him to the ground, pinning him with a knee to his back. "You picked the wrong couple," Jalen growled, voice low, breath ragged. Behind him, Rickman rose again, face bloodied, breath wheezing. His hand dropped to his sidearm. From the crowd, "He's going for a weapon. Don't do it." Jalen turned, eyes snapping to the motion. No time to think. 2 strides. He slammed into Rickman just as the weapon cleared its holster. The gun flew across the pavement, skidding under a nearby car. Jalen roared as he drove Rickman back into the cruiser, one arm locked around his throat. The other delivered blow after blow to the chest and side. "You think you can put your hands on my wife? You think there won't be consequences?" Rickman swung blindly, sloppy now. He connected with Jalen's side again, hitting the same bruised rib. Jalen staggered from the impact, and Rickman launched forward with one last strike. Jalen groaned as Rickman's fist slammed into his collarbone. But he didn't go down. He absorbed the hit, planted his feet, and with a sharp pivot, grabbed Rickman by the vest and slammed him hard into the concrete. The ground cracked beneath them on impact. Rickman didn't get back up. Jalen stood over him, chest heaving, arms trembling, not from fear, but from control. He could have finished it. He didn't. Behind him, Mills lay groaning on the ground, barely conscious, and just feet away, Brianna had made it to her knees, her wrists still bound, her lips split, her breath shallow. "Jalen," she whispered, her voice shaking with pain. He turned, and the moment he saw her, the breath caught in his throat. "I've got you," he said, voice low, raw. "I've got you, baby." Sirens began to rise in the distance, not close yet, but coming fast. Jalen rushed to her side, dropping to his knees and moving quickly to the cuffs. They weren't standard, just cheap flex cuffs, sloppily applied. He snapped them loose. Brianna gasped as circulation returned, sharp needles of pain racing down her arms. He caught her before she could fall. One hand cradled the back of her head, the other held her close. "We have to go," she whispered. "I know," he said, already scanning for exits. Rickman stirred behind them, groaning, trying to push himself up. Jalen turned and met his eyes. No words passed between them, just a stare that froze the moment. Then he scooped Brianna into his arms, ignoring the pain flaring in his side and the blood on his brow. The crowd still stood frozen, still watching, still filming, but no one tried to stop them. As Jalen disappeared with her into the alley behind the boutique, the city erupted. Tires screeched down the block, sirens pierced the silence like blades through glass. The hunt had begun. They moved fast, Jalen gripping Brianna's hand, not just to lead her, but to steady her. Her steps were unsteady, her body still reeling from the assault. Her green dress was torn at the hem, her wrists marked by the cuffs, her lip dried with blood. She didn't cry. She wouldn't. Not yet. Jalen's body ached with every movement, especially his ribs, but there was no room for pain, only purpose. They slipped through alleyways like ghosts, moving behind locked gates, hopping over trash bins, cutting through narrow paths between buildings Jalen hadn't seen in years, but never forgot. He had studied exits like this before, for missions that happened far from home. The instinct was still there, now burning hotter than ever. "We keep east," he said, pulling her behind a boarded-up shop as a cruiser passed close enough for them to feel its engine. "Stay low, stay in shadow, no phones, no cards. They'll track everything now." "I left my phone in my bag," Brianna said, voice steady but strained. "Good," Jalen nodded. "From now on, we go dark." They crossed behind an idling delivery truck and slipped through a church parking lot. The floodlights hadn't activated yet, giving them enough cover to duck behind a row of hedges and cut into the back of a residential alley. The city kept moving, cars, music, laughter in the distance, as if none of it had happened. But for Jalen and Brianna, the world had shifted. To bystanders, to screens, to the phones still recording, they weren't just a couple anymore. They were fugitives, a narrative already taking shape. Jalen didn't say a word as they slipped behind an apartment building. A broken fence gave them access to a narrow corridor between properties. His mind was already moving forward, already unlocking a part of his past he hadn't touched in years. On the other side of the alley, he reached into his boot and pulled out a scratched burner phone. He hadn't used it since the last time he'd helped extract someone across international waters. He powered it on, waited 6 seconds. A secure module blinked to life. His fingers moved without thought. Muscle memory. Call sign, orbital. Status, secure. Request, civilian extraction. Pursuit active. Safe house access needed. Seconds later, the screen flashed. Alpha 3. Entry via Bellflower Apartments underground garage. Side entrance only. No lights. ETA. 17 minutes on foot. Quiet route advised. Jalen looked at Brianna, his voice low, steady. "We've got a place not far, off-grid, friend of mine, solid." She looked up at him, pale, shaken, but her eyes burned with clarity. "The military used to run off-grid comm lines," she said quietly. Use them to extract civilians during missions that never made the news. Jalen nodded. He still owes me. The safe house wasn't much, just a hidden unit buried behind a dented metal door in the back of a closed-down garage. No cameras, no neighbors, no attention. They moved quickly, slipping through a narrow pedestrian path, ducking beneath a canopy of ivy that choked the fence behind an abandoned preschool. The world around them changed with every block, the clean sidewalks of Buckhead giving way to cracked pavement and overgrown lots. The gloss of the city faded behind them. Another siren echoed in the distance, closer now. When they reached the door, Jalen entered the code from memory. The keypad clicked, the lock disengaged. The metal door groaned open just wide enough to slip through. The garage beneath the building was dark and empty, save for a few forgotten cars and oil stains baked into the concrete. At the far end, a large storage bay sat slightly open, hidden in plain sight. Inside, one cot, a table, a shelf of old canned goods, water jugs, and a tactical bin covered in dust and faded stenciling. A single bulb buzzed overhead, casting a warm, unsteady light. Brianna sank onto the cot, not from exhaustion, but from the sudden release. Her breathing slowed, steady but heavy. She didn't speak. Jalen stood by the door, watching the shadows, listening to the silence. When he turned to her, his voice softened. "Are you okay?" She nodded once. "I think I left my voice back there," she said quietly, eyes on her trembling hands. "I couldn't even speak at the end. I just froze." He knelt beside her, voice low but certain. "You didn't freeze. You made it out. You're here." Her gaze lifted to meet his. "They'll twist it. The video, the angle, everything. They'll turn what you did into something violent." "They already have," Jalen said, gesturing to the small wall-mounted TV. A breaking news banner scrolled across the screen. No sound, just subtitles. "Suspects wanted in officer assault, considered dangerous." Brianna's throat tightened. "They won't stop. They'll come for our jobs, our names, our lives." "Then we stop them first," Jalen said. He crossed to the old tactical bin, pulled out a compact laptop wrapped in cloth beneath a bundle of tools. The boot-up was slow, but it still linked to a secure satellite network Jalen hadn't touched since his last classified assignment. He set it on the table, opened a terminal window. "First we erase our trail," he said. "Then we intercept theirs, radio chatter, internal dispatch, every leak, every message. We hear it before they do." Brianna stood now, her footing stronger, voice sharper. "And then we build the case." Jalen looked at her, one brow raised. "We expose them," she said. "Not just today. Everything. Every complaint. Every cover-up. We bring it all into the light." He gave a small nod, the first flicker of a smile since the day began. "Then let's build the fire." The sun had barely broken the horizon when the first squad car cruised past Brianna's office on Forsyth Street, lights flashing, tires screaming. By mid-morning, the city pulsed with one message: find them. The search began like clockwork. Door knocks, press releases, anonymous tips, staged updates to local media. Pressure on every street camera and license plate reader from Midtown to Decatur. By 9 a.m., every major station had published the same frame, a blurred still from shaky phone footage. Jalen mid-motion, overpowering two uniformed officers. The clip was edited, trimmed precisely to hide the beginning, to hide the truth. "Former soldier assaults police, wife accomplice." The headline spread like fire. In grocery stores, gas stations, cafes, their faces stared back, frozen in frames labeled with words like fugitive, hostile, armed. Nowhere did the footage show Brianna pinned to the ground. Nowhere did it show the elbow to her ribs. Nowhere did it include her words, "I'm a lawyer." All of that had been clipped, edited out, rewritten. At her firm, Brianna's desk sat untouched. Her computer locked behind encryption no one could break. Still, questions spread like smoke. HR was called into closed-door meetings. Partners whispered in corners. A junior associate was pulled aside. Had she ever seemed unstable? Another was asked, did she ever express political views that might sound extreme? No one asked how many high-stakes cases she'd won. No one mentioned the hundreds of hours she gave to pro bono work, to helping those the system left behind. Instead, somewhere quietly, someone printed her employee file and placed it in a box. Back at Brianna's firm, someone quietly slid a resignation form into a sealed envelope, just in case the board decided to create distance before the media storm got any worse. Across the city, Jalen's name started surfacing in fragments of old classified files. His deployments, commendations, training. But the headlines didn't mention the lives he'd saved, only vague references to covert conflicts, shadow ops. Late-night commentators labeled him highly trained, potentially unstable. That word stuck. Inside the safe house, Jalen sat silently, his gaze fixed on the flickering TV. The tension coming off him wasn't rage, it was pressure. Internal, restrained, boiling beneath the surface. Brianna sat beside him, eyes on the same screen. They're shaping the story, she said. They're making you the villain. His voice was flat. They need someone that fits what they already believe. She nodded. And someone to distract from the fact that 2 officers assaulted an unarmed woman in broad daylight. Jalen turned toward her, the sharpness in his eyes returning. We need to get ahead of this. Brianna was already on her feet, pacing. I've started. I reached out to Maya in public records. She's trying to pull the original 911 logs, but if the call was internal, it might have bypassed dispatch entirely. Then we need uncut body cam footage, Jalen said. There's a window. If we can find someone inside who still believes in the truth, we use that. If not, he opened a storage bin and pulled out a second laptop. Beneath it, a folder marked with a faded Delta unit code. We make the truth louder than the lie. Across town, on the 13th floor of Atlanta PD's Internal Affairs Bureau, Detective Celeste Grant leaned back in her chair. The raw footage of the incident was paused on her screen. Her eyes narrowed as she scrolled frame by frame. Again. She watched how the officers approached Brianna, watched how quickly things escalated, watched how abruptly the footage was cut. The file hadn't been easy to find. Someone had tried to overwrite it with the edited version. But Grant had seen enough sabotage in her years to know when a file had been tampered with. She dug deeper, and what she found did not match the department's report. One frame stopped her cold. Brianna, face down, Rickman's hand pressed into her neck. The timestamp showed several seconds before Jalen even arrived. No weapon, no resistance, just fear. Officer Rickman, she murmured, pulling out a printed log. 4 citizen complaints in the last year. 3 dismissed. 1 sealed. She picked up her phone and dialed a secure line. This is Grant. I want shift logs for Rickman and Mills, last 72 hours, and flag any internal memos tied to the Freeman case. Any reason? Came the voice on the other end. Yes, she replied. Because something here stinks, and I'm not letting this city destroy a soldier and a civil rights attorney to cover it up. Back at the garage, Brianna moved between the cot and table, while Jalen tapped into encrypted radio logs. Her screen was cluttered with open tabs, headlines, clips, comment threads. The public was already watching, and the court of opinion had already picked sides. I don't know how long Maya can stall, Brianna said. She's risking her job. She won't be the last, Jalen said. People saw what happened, even if they're scared to admit it. Brianna stopped pacing. Then we make it impossible to look away. The warehouse wasn't much to outsiders, just a dusty, cluttered space filled with tangled wires, outdated drives, and crates marked with old cereals. But to Jalen, it was something more. It was preparation. It was memory. And now it was war. In the corner, Sean Freeman sat hunched over 3 laptops, screens glowing with lines of code. His fingers danced across the keyboard, bypassing encryption protocols no civilian institution would admit even existed. I didn't expect to hear from you again, Sean said without looking up. You vanished for 2 years. Now you're on every news channel. "It's serious," Jalen replied, standing by the bench while Brianna leaned against a pillar nearby, arms crossed tightly, the cut on her lip still fresh. Sean finally looked up. "So, what are you trying to prove?" Brianna stepped forward. "That the footage was altered." Sean raised a brow. "You're not wrong. I've seen what they released. Audio's scrubbed in 3 spots. Timestamps jumped twice. Subtle enough for most to miss. But if you know what to look for..." He tapped his keyboard, pulling up a timeline. "The real giveaway? They cut the footage 6 seconds before Jalen arrived." Jalen exhaled slowly. "We were right." "You were," Sean confirmed. "But proving it won't be easy. That footage didn't go through the standard chain. Someone intercepted it, rerouted it to an off-grid storage node before it ever hit the system." "Then we traced the off-grid node," Brianna said. Sean gave a low whistle. "That's going to get messy." Back in the warehouse, Sean leaned back in his chair. I respect the confidence," he said, glancing at Jalen. "But you don't just track a shadow server from the outside. These things are sealed tighter than Fort Bragg. If you want a shot, you'd need someone inside the department, someone who isn't afraid to lose everything." Jalen and Brianna exchanged a glance. It was Brianna who answered. "What if we already have someone?" At the Atlanta Police Department's Central Precinct, Officer Cal Dawson stood alone in the break room, one shoulder leaning against a vending machine, his eyes fixed on the screen of his phone. The news segment looped again, edited footage of the Buckhead incident, the same distorted version that painted Jalen as the aggressor. He paused it. The timestamp didn't match what he remembered. Cal had been at the feed terminal that night, a quiet hallway tucked in the back of the precinct where incoming footage from patrol units landed before it was logged and archived. He wasn't even supposed to be on duty. His shift had ended an hour earlier, but he'd agreed to swap with Officer Lenz so he could attend his daughter's recital. He said yes without thinking, like he always did, like everyone assumed he had nowhere else to be. That night had been slow. The system was lagging, flooded with files from dozens of units. Cal had been helping another tech clear corrupted data when the screen flickered, just once, and a new file dropped into the queue. At first, he didn't think much of it. Most of the files that passed through were routine, traffic stops, noise complaints, routine disturbances, but this one made him stop. The camera opened on the sidewalk outside the boutique. A black woman, well-dressed, calm, shopping bag in one hand. 2 officers approached from the edge of the frame, both white, both grinning like they already knew how this was going to go. Cal didn't recognize her at first, but then the camera caught her face, and it clicked. She was an attorney. He'd seen her photo in a city newsletter about a civil rights panel a few months back. Then Rickman grabbed her wrist. Her bag hit the ground with a dull thud. She stepped back, not in defiance, but in disbelief. Her mouth moved, not shouting, not hostile, just startled. A question, maybe. A plea. Then Mills moved in, cuffs already in his hand. That's when she screamed. Not from pain, from fear. The sound of someone realizing, too late, that this was actually happening. Cal watched, frozen, watched again. The second time, he leaned forward, catching the exact frame where she hit the pavement, her head bouncing once against the curb. No threat, no resistance, no weapon, no request for backup. Just a calculated use of force. And then, the screen blinked. The file was gone, replaced by a corrupted placeholder loop from a traffic stop logged hours earlier. No trace, no archive, as if it had never existed at all. He didn't say anything. Not that night. Not the next day. He just carried it, a weight in his chest that didn't let up. Hoping someone else had seen it. Hoping it would resurface. Hoping, maybe, there had been some mistake. But days passed. Silence grew. And then came the press conference. The department released its version, a short, distant clip of a brief altercation. The reporters read it like scripture. The suspect resisted. The male suspect assaulted officers. It was clean, rehearsed, perfectly staged. Cal watched it all in silence, the screen muted as his commanding officers repeated what they knew wasn't true. That night his phone buzzed. Unknown number, One message. You saw it. We know. You can't ignore this. Cal stared at the screen, the glow painting his hands pale and cold. He didn't recognize the number. But the message wasn't random. It wasn't a guess. It was precise, surgical. They knew. His fingers hovered. He typed slowly. I'm not a part of this. I don't want to be. The reply came instantly, as if they'd been waiting for him to break. Then meet us. Help us fix it. He sat there a long time, the precinct still humming around him. Somewhere in the hallway, someone was laughing. A door slammed. Coffee stains marked the table beside him. The vending machine clicked behind his shoulder. And he remembered Brianna. How quickly it all happened. How fast a lie can be weaponized when a badge tells it. He exhaled slowly, then typed back, when and where? Back at the warehouse, Jalen leaned over Sean's shoulder as a full network map loaded onto the screen. Internal server routes, known entry points, off-grid redirections. The hunt for the original file had begun. Rana stood beside them, arms folded, eyes locked on the screen. Focused. The internal storage pipeline routes through a gateway node here, Sean said, pointing to a red cluster on the precinct network map. But the backup signal was hijacked, rerouted through a channel reserved for internal audits. That's not automatic. Someone redirected it manually. Someone helped, Brianna murmured. Or someone was told to, Jalen added. Sean spun slightly in his chair, facing them. If you're serious about taking this public, you're going to need 3 things. 1, a full chain of custody for the footage. That means someone inside willing to say what they saw before it was cut. 2, a fragment of the original file. Something clean, untouched. And 3, direct evidence of misconduct by Rickman and Mills. We're working on all 3, Brianna said. Cal Dawson saw the footage before it vanished. He just agreed to meet. Jalen turned to her. You trust him? No, she replied, but I think he's scared, and fear tends to make people honest. Sean walked to the corner, unlocking a black case the size of a briefcase. Inside sat a slim, hardened recorder, no larger than a paperback, unmarked, untraceable. Take this, he said. If he says anything that matters, we capture it. Jalen took it silently. As they prepared to leave, Sean pulled him aside. You're really doing this? Going up against the whole department? Jalen didn't blink. We don't have a choice. Sean's voice dropped. This isn't just about the system. Once this starts, you'll make enemies who won't stop looking. Jalen's stare was steady. Then let them look. Outside, the sky had deepened to violet. The city lit up, restless again. Somewhere inside those towers and concrete walls were the men who tried to bury the truth. Now, Jalen and Brianna were digging it back out, piece by piece. Inside the warehouse, the air had changed. Not tension, something colder, cleaner, purpose. Jalen stood at the table, watching encrypted messages scroll to their conclusion. Brianna sat beside him, spine straight, her screen open to the complaint history she'd compiled. One accusation after another against Rickman and Mills, each dismissed, each one ignored. But together, they painted a pattern. Across the room, Sean hunched over his rig, hands flying across the keys, encrypting a new set of files. Images, timestamps, audio, all scraped from internal systems and now living inside air-gapped drives, sealed in a lead-lined case beneath the floor. I'll keep it here, Sean said without looking up. Untraceable. Not even satellite could find it. Jalen stepped closer. And if something happens? Sean glanced up. It dumps automatically. 3 press outlets. 1 whistleblower archive overseas. No edits, no spin, no names scrubbed. If I go down, the truth goes out. Brianna exhaled slowly. It was the first time in her life she realized that evidence might not be enough. Not in a system engineered to erase it. The law wasn't going to save them. The truth would have to survive without it. Then a soft chime, a new alert on Sean's screen. Cal Dawson had arrived. He stepped in through the side entrance, his expression tight, his badge tucked away but not forgotten. He wasn't in uniform, but he moved like a man who still wore one in his head. His fingers fidgeted once near his jacket, then settled. I don't know how long I can stay, he said quietly. You stayed this long, Jalen answered. That means something. Cal hesitated, then pulled a small flash drive from his pocket. I copied this before the server sweep. It's not the full video, just the segment. The moment Rickman struck her, timestamps intact. Sean plugged it in immediately, his eyes tracking the screen. Brianna leaned forward, breath held. Well, she asked. It's clean, Sean confirmed. No compression, full resolution, timestamp matches dispatch logs. This is gold. Cal didn't look proud. He looked ashamed. I didn't speak up when I saw it, he said. I was scared of what it meant, of turning on my own. He paused. But I can't sit back and watch them destroy 2 people to protect a lie. Brianna's voice was gentle. We don't need you to bring them down. We just need your help to catch them in the act. Cal looked at her, confused. How? Jalen turned to the whiteboard where Sean had written earlier, grabbing a marker. We use the pattern, he said. Rickman and Mills have a type. Well-dressed black women, alone, in neighborhoods they're not used to seeing us in. They profile, harass, escalate. It's a pattern. So we give them what they're looking for, Brianna said softly. Cal's eyes widened. Number, that's too dangerous. But Brianna was already nodding. If they think I'm someone new, someone vulnerable, and you report me anonymously as a possible suspect, just like before, they'll come. Only this time, they'll walk straight into a surveillance trap. Sean tapped the case under the table. 3 camera angles, 2 directional mics, parabolic receiver, 40-foot capture radius. If they say anything that even smells like profiling, we'll have it. Cal looked around the room. His voice dropped. You're betting your lives on this working. Jalen looked him dead in the eye. Number, we're betting everything. But are you sure? Cal's voice was low but firm. You understand what you're asking her to do? You're putting her right back in front of the same wolves who attacked her. She knows, Jalen replied. Brianna nodded. I'm not doing this because I want to, she said. I'm doing it because if we don't, they'll keep doing it. To other women. To people who won't have someone like Jalen to pull them off the pavement. Sean looked back from his station. I'll prep the gear tonight. Just give me a location. Cal hesitated, then gave a slow nod. There's an abandoned diner 3 blocks off Holloway. No cameras. Still flagged in the patrol system as a quiet zone. They use it when they want to keep things off paper. Perfect, Jalen said. You log the call like before. Say you spotted someone matching a report. Request Rickman and Mills directly. Make it sound like you're helping them clean something up. Quiet. Cal asked. And when it's done? Brianna stepped forward. We take the footage to someone who can't ignore it. Public defenders, press, internal affairs, whatever it takes. And we release it. Full, unedited. Sean's voice was steady but heavy. Once the trap is sprung, I'll hold the master file. If anything happens to either of you, it goes public. Full release. No edits, no spin. Cal looked down at his badge. I never thought it would come to this, he said. Neither did we, Jalen replied. But here we are. In the dim glow of the warehouse, the plan took shape. Not just to clear their names, but to expose a system that had shielded abusers for too long. The predators had hunted in the dark. Now, it was their turn to step into the light. The warehouse air was tense, sharp, expectant. Every breath carried weight. A soft click echoed as Sean slipped the last encrypted microdrive into its case, locking it beneath the trapdoor hatch in the floor. Jalen stood at the whiteboard, arms crossed, eyes scanning the layout. Bullet points, timestamps, floor plans, all marked with the focus of a soldier preparing for a mission where failure wasn't an option. Cal stood near the center of the room, his phone in hand, staring down at the contact on the screen. You sure about this? He asked, tension in his shoulders. You're the only one who can make the call, Jalen said. They won't come unless it comes from someone they trust. Brianna stepped forward, composed and calm. Make it sound real, familiar, not too polished. Give them exactly what they want to hear. Cal swallowed hard, then tapped the call button. The room fell silent save for the faint hum of server fans. 1 ring, 2. On the 3rd, a gravel-toned voice answered. Rickman! Cal exhaled slowly and let his tone shift. Casual, just official enough to pass. "Hey, it's Dawson. Got something odd just now. Figured you might want to look before it moves up the chain." A pause. Rickman's voice sharpened. "What kind of odd?" Cal began to pace, sounding like a man piecing thoughts together on the fly. "Woman. Matches the Freeman wife's profile. Black, early 30s, dressed sharp, walking fast near Holloway. Looked like she didn't want to be seen. Slipped into that old diner, the one with the health violations." Rickman made a low sound, somewhere between suspicion and interest. "That's 2 blocks from where we picked her up last time." "Exactly," Cal said. "Could be a coincidence. Could be someone trying to move something sensitive while the department's still cleaning up. She's got a leather case, sat in the back, hasn't looked up since." There was a pause. Then Rickman's tone shifted, amused. "And you're calling me why?" Cal let the bait slide gently forward. "Because this feels like the kind of thing that either disappears clean or blows up. And I figured you might want the chance to handle it quiet, like before." A low chuckle from Rickman. "You think it's her?" "No," Cal replied smoothly. "I think it's someone connected, or bait. Either way, no cameras, no backup. You and Mills show up clean, you might catch something useful, or not. Doesn't matter to me. Just thought I'd toss it your way before I go official." Another pause, then, "She alone?" "Watched her go in myself," Cal lied. "Still hasn't moved. Bag's still on the table. She's nervous, trying to hide it." A final beat of silence. Then Rickman said, "We'll be there in 20, don't move." He hung up. Cal lowered the phone slowly. "They're coming." The diner was dark, hollow, long since stripped of its furnishings, left with only dust and faded tile for company. But the bones were still there. The booths, the counter, the smudged windows that fractured the late afternoon light into narrow blades across the floor. Brianna sat in the back corner, just as planned, calm but alert, her sweater draped neatly, the leather case at her side, like she belonged there. Above her, a pinhole camera sat tucked inside a ceiling vent. 2 more were hidden in a wall light and beneath a table leg. Sean's field mics were calibrated and feeding clean audio to a van parked a block away. "Cameras are live," Sean said over comms. "Audio's clean. You're good to roll." Jalen's voice followed, steady in her ear. "I'm outside. Visual sweep every 10. I've got you." Brianna didn't respond. She didn't need to. She sat still, breathing in rhythm, eyes flicking toward the door, then back to the table. And then she waited. The leather strap of the case brushed against Brianna's side. Her palms rested open on her lap, calm on the outside, but her stomach tightened like a coiled spring. She didn't have to fake the tension. She just had to wait. The cruiser arrived exactly 18 minutes later, headlights off, tires whispering over gravel. Rickman stepped out first, tugging at the corners of his coat with that swagger that came from years of unchecked power. Mills followed, slower, unsure, his shoulders hunched. "She's still inside," Rickman muttered, eyeing the diner. "You see the case?" "Yeah," Mills replied. "Right on the table." Rickman smirked. "Bet it's nothing, but let's have a little fun before we call it in." They entered the diner without drawing weapons. This wasn't that kind of encounter. Not yet. Rickman moved like a man who never expected resistance. When he saw her, his smile widened. "Well, well," he said, stepping into her space. "What brings someone like you to a place like this?" Brianna didn't flinch. "Waiting on a ride." Rickman nodded toward the leather case. "That your delivery? Client files?" He chuckled. "Mind if I take a peek?" "I do," she said. "You don't have a warrant." Rickman lowered his voice. "You really think warrants matter in a place like this?" Behind the utility lamp, a hidden camera blinked twice, still rolling. "You're not the first one to sit in that booth thinking the law would protect them," Rickman continued. "Let me guess. You're another activist, got a blog, maybe an audience." Brianna said nothing. Mills stood nearby, silent, arms folded, his eyes darting nervously toward the exit. Rickman leaned in closer. "People like you come into our city thinking you're above the rules, but we write the rules, we decide who walks and who gets walked out." Brianna tilted her head, unshaken. "You don't sound like someone sworn to serve and protect." Rickman's expression hardened. Protect who? You? The second I saw you and your husband in that shop, I knew you'd bring trouble. His voice dropped venomous. You weren't supposed to fight back. You were supposed to fold, disappear, like the rest. Then, a voice cut through the silence. You just admitted it. Rickman froze. Jalen stepped into the light, his face cold, focused. Behind him, Cal Dawson appeared, holding up his badge. Every word, Cal said, voice steady. Recorded, stored, time-stamped. Rickman's mouth opened, but no words came. For the first time, the control he'd always carried like a weapon had been ripped from his hands. Brianna stood, lifting the leather case with poise. We didn't need you to think we were guilty, she said. We just needed you to believe you were untouchable. And for the first time, Rickman understood he wasn't. His breath came fast and shallow. His fingers twitched near his belt, not quite reaching for his weapon, but no longer pretending to be calm either. His jaw clenched so tight, it looked like it might snap. You set us up, he spat. This is entrapment. Cal stood by the door, badge still raised. No, he said firmly. This is exposure, and you gave us everything. Mills looked pale now, a tremble behind his eyes. Rick, we should go. We need to... We're not going anywhere, Rickman snapped. He pointed at Jalen. You're a thug. You put 2 cops in the hospital. You were beating my wife on a public street, Jalen replied, his voice low. What did you think was going to happen? Rickman turned to Brianna, rage boiling over. You think this little show changes anything? You think anyone's going to believe a couple of criminals with a grudge and a camera? Brianna stepped forward, calm and deadly. They'll believe every second, because we have more than one camera, more than one feed, more than your voice bragging about targeting women who look like me. Rickman sneered. Your word against ours. He jabbed a finger at her. You doctored that video, just like you doctored the first one. She didn't blink. You're right about one thing, she said. The first video was doctored, but not by us, by you. She stepped closer. Her voice cut like glass. The body cam footage from that day, we traced the metadata. It was pulled from your unit and routed through a private review server that doesn't even exist on official records. The audio was scrubbed, the timestamp jumped, but what you didn't count on... She lifted the case gently. It was that someone saved the raw file, the missing 6 seconds, the part where I was already cuffed when you slammed me down, the part where you said, and I quote, "This is a message." Rickman's lips moved, but nothing came out. You're lying, he muttered. No, Cal said quietly. She's not. I saw it. That's why I came forward. Mills looked like he might be sick. Rickman took a half step forward, chest puffed, still clinging to what power he had left. You want to drag me down in the media? You want a war? Fine. But you better pray nothing about the 2 of you leaks. You better hope you didn't leave anything behind. You'd rather stay buried. Brianna smiled. Not smug, not cruel, just the quiet confidence of a woman who had walked through fire and was still standing. She had walked through hell and survived it. We didn't come here to gloat, Rickman, Brianna said, her voice steady, unwavering. We came here to give you a chance to hear what's coming, before the rest of the world does. She reached into the leather case and pulled out a single envelope, placing it gently on the table between them. Inside is a summary of every complaint ever filed against you, she said, including the ones that never made it past internal review. She leaned in slightly. Remember Dana Wallace, the high school teacher you pulled over on her way to a night class? Report dismissed? She paused. I found her, she gave a sworn statement. Rickman's hands curled into fists. His knuckles turned white. You don't want this to go any further, he hissed. It already has, Jalen said, stepping beside his wife. Cal moved to the door and opened it slowly. You can walk out now, he said, or be walked out later. Rickman stared at them, but deep inside, beneath the bluster, beneath the years of unchecked power, he knew. It was over. Without a word, he snatched the envelope and shoved past Cal, brushing his shoulder as he stormed out into the dying light. Mills lingered a moment longer. He looked at Brianna, then at Jalen, then finally down at the floor. I didn't mean for it to go that far, he muttered. Brianna met his eyes. But you let it. He nodded once and walked out. Back at the warehouse, Sean was already syncing the diner footage with the raw body cam file Cal had recovered. The contrast was undeniable. The department's version, blurred, compressed, edited to fit a lie. The raw file, clear, brutal, and true. Her voice begging them to stop. Rickman's rage. Jalen's approach. Unfiltered, unforgivable. Sean leaned back in his chair, jaw tight. "They're going to bury this," he said. "Then we bury them first," Jalen replied. Brianna stood with folded arms, watching the truth unfold on screen. "Let's make it loud." Sean launched the first upload. The uncut diner footage sent through a secure legal channel, embedded with metadata that confirmed its origin. Then came the full timeline. The original incident, the doctored department video, the raw cam footage, and the sting operation. He submitted them to legal organizations, to journalists, to whistleblower sites. He also backed them up on international nodes. "They'll never get it all down," he said. "Even if they try, the internet doesn't forget." The next morning, Freeman was no longer whispered with suspicion. It was shouted in headlines across the country. Leaked video confirms racist Atlanta cops altered evidence. Raw footage exposes pattern of abuse and cover-up. Civil rights lawyer and Delta vet bait their abusers and win. Protests erupted by noon. Public defenders demanded independent oversight. Civil rights attorneys filed injunctions. And by nightfall, Rickman and Mills were suspended without pay, facing criminal charges. Internal Affairs had no choice. Too many people were watching now. Too much truth was public. Inside the Freeman safe house, they sat quietly, watching the world catch up. Brianna's face was calm, her eyes heavy with everything they'd endured. Jalen took her hand without a word. "We said we'd make it loud," she whispered. Jalen looked at her, a faint smile breaking through. "We're just getting started." And somewhere, deep beneath the ruins of power and silence, the first stone had cracked loose. But even as the headlines rolled, Brianna could still hear Rickman's voice echoing in her mind. His smirk, his venom, the confidence of a man who thought he would never be held accountable. That sound wasn't unfamiliar. It was the same tone buried in boardrooms, in courtrooms, in precinct halls. But this time, it wasn't buried. This time it was recorded, shared, undeniable, and the fallout had only begun. Sean didn't sleep. He spent the night archiving the footage, duplicating it, encrypting it, spreading it through every back channel they had. He wasn't just protecting evidence. He was protecting survival. Not the kind of survival that comes from hiding. The kind that comes from being seen. Jalen stood watch at the window, alert. No flashing lights, no shadows yet. But the city outside had changed. The silence wasn't fear anymore. It was the silence before the flood. By dawn, the footage had gone viral. Clips on social media. Then full versions on encrypted servers. Then headlines. Then television. The diner. The confession. The side-by-side breakdown of the cover-up. Each video told a story. Together they told the truth. And now the whole world could see it. Inside her corner of the safe house, Brianna watched the headlines unfold in real time. Not out of curiosity, but necessity. She needed to see the world finally confronting what she had always known in her bones. Power left unchecked doesn't protect, it destroys. And for too long, men like Rickman had been allowed to write the narrative. The reaction was instant. National outlets scrambled for coverage. Cable news split their screens, footage on one side, analysis on the other. Activists shared the videos with a caption that echoed everywhere. This is what accountability looks like when you fight back. By that afternoon, crowds gathered outside City Hall. Hundreds stood with signs bearing her name. Some wore shirts with still frames from the video, Rickman's hand reaching across the table, the caption frozen in time. Others held posters that simply read, "Let the truth speak." But not everyone stood in solidarity. The police union released a sterile statement, condemning unauthorized recordings and baiting tactics. Local radio hosts questioned whether Brianna and Jalen had provoked the officers. It didn't matter. The footage spoke louder than spin. The system could deny it, but the people wouldn't. At Internal Affairs, Detective Celeste Grant watched the diner video for the 5th time. No commentary was needed. Rickman's words condemned themselves. His open disdain, the sneer in his voice, the way he spoke about women who looked like Brianna, like they were a threat, not citizens. His casual mention of deleting footage, his confidence in being untouchable, and Mills just standing there, silent, complicit. Celeste didn't flinch. She attached her findings to the official case file, typed out a formal request for indefinite suspension pending criminal review, and walked the report straight into the commissioner's office. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Across town, institutions were waking up, some out of guilt, others out of self-preservation. At the law firm where Brianna once worked, panic had replaced silence. Weeks earlier, they had suspended her following her arrest, citing a need to review her conduct. But now her name was in every headline, praised for bravery and calm under pressure. In a glass conference room, senior partners reviewed a drafted apology, rewritten 3 times. One of them finally read it aloud. "We deeply regret our initial response to attorney Brianna Freeman's detainment. Her actions were not only justified, they were courageous. Our failure to stand by her does not reflect the values we claim to uphold. We offer our public apology and full reinstatement." It was released online within the hour. Brianna saw it. She didn't reply. She had already moved on. Apologies made after public shame weren't apologies. They were insurance policies. That afternoon, Jalen received an encrypted message. The sender, Echo, a name he hadn't seen since a covert op overseas. The message was short. "We saw the drop. You did good, the kind of good they don't always reward. If it gets hot, say the word. You won't be alone." Jalen read it twice. He didn't need extraction. Not yet. But knowing someone was watching from the shadows, someone who still believed in justice, even when the system didn't, meant everything. Sometimes justice didn't wear a badge. Sometimes it wore silence and waited for the right moment to act. Later that evening, a black government vehicle rolled into a secured entrance beneath the courthouse. Inside, Brianna and Jalen sat quietly, dressed in plain clothes, but carrying the weight of a movement. They had been called to testify, and neither of them hesitated. This wasn't just about clearing their names. This was about closing a door that had stayed open for far too long. They stepped into the hearing chamber. The room was silent, the kind of silence that feels like it might break under the weight of unspoken truths. Celeste Grant sat near the front, flanked by legal counsel and civilian board members. Rickman was there too, stiff, seething. Mills beside him, pale, tight-lipped, refusing to meet anyone's gaze. Behind them, the gallery was packed with officials, press, and members of the public. Everyone knew this was the moment. Brianna was called first. She stood, smoothed the front of her blazer, and walked to the witness stand, heels clicking steadily across the polished floor. No trembling, no blink too long. She took the oath with a clear voice and met the prosecutor's gaze without flinching. When asked what happened, she didn't begin at the diner, or the sting, or even the arrest. She began at the sidewalk. "The first time they saw me," she said, her voice steady, "I was walking out of a store. I had just bought a dress for our anniversary dinner.